Hey guys, welcome to John Kohler's garden. So today we are going to do something kind of fun. Well, we always do fun things. So I thought we would do some sort of like drawing of different topics to kind of share with you guys like our different perspectives of things.
Yeah, kind of like a debate, right?
Kind of like a debate.
But not a debate.
If you want to make it a debate, you can. Or if you agree, then I guess you can just point out
Pros and cons to everything in life and in gardening, and we're just going to maybe share some of our sides and opinions.
Yep.
Cool.
Cool. So we got pretty much all these topics in the hat to draw. And then...
and the person that picks the topic, because there's 2 topics on each one, gets to choose their side.
Yep. So rock, paper, scissors?
All right.
Rock, paper, 3? Oh, like what? On 3?
1, 2, 3.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Damn. I go first. I'll take this one. All right. So we have growing in pots versus the ground. So let's see. I'm going to choose the ground.
All right.
I mean, so growing in the ground is way better than growing in pots because things would grow in the ground naturally. Pots are not necessarily in nature. Nobody has plastic pots. Everything was connected to the ground. It's very important to be connected to the ground because when you grow in the ground, you are earthed, which is very important, especially for humans to be earthed and grounded. Plants will grow better if they're grounded than through in a pot where they're not connected to the ground unless you put a grounding stake through there. But the other thing is that there's microbial and nutrient transfer when in the ground because you're not in an isolated pot. So nature could work more effectively. Earthworms could get into the ground where you're growing in a raised bed with an open bottom. You know, the microbes, the bacteria, all the water that you grow, that you wash down will then feed the aquifers down below if you water way too much. But also, more importantly, bring the soil alive below your garden. And that's how nature has been growing. And so, and the other thing is, if in the right climate and you have the right soil, you shouldn't have to fertilize in the ground because nature makes its own fertilizer, provided you have it set up properly. And I wouldn't necessarily say that in pots because you have such a limited quantity of soil.
That's all true. Except you do have some in pots, so...
I mean, of course I grow things in pots. I mean, I have a nice tree here in a pot, and I'm growing plenty of plants in pots.
So pots work.
But you can grow in pots, but it's, in my opinion, especially in my climate zone, it's a lot more work because, man, these pots dry out so damn quick. That's another reason why you want to grow in the soil because it's more self-moderating, so it's more hands-off, whereas pots, you really have to micromanage them more, and I'm not a big fan of micromanaging. But then the other thing is, I have all these walkways that are just lined with pots, and it's good because I can't really, like, they're movable. So I mean, there's some benefits to pots, but that's Wendy's job to tell you the benefits of growing out of pots.
Yeah, because there's so many different types of pots that you can choose from. You know, materials like plastic ones. I think works better in like a more hot place. It would dry out faster. It kind of retains the moisture better. There's like grow pots. You know, that tends to dry out a lot faster, but they work well, especially in like if you're growing in a small garden or plants that are like sensitive to, I don't know, just like the environment, or if you have a new plant you don't really know, like not sure where they should go. I think pots are really great for testing out, like, you know, experimenting where they can go. You can always pick them up and move them around. Or like if I grow a lot of tropical things, they're sensitive to the cold, I can move them easily to overwinter, you know, so trying to dig them up and put them in shock. And it's just like a good way to retain, especially depending on what you grow. Like invasive plants are good in pots. And if I'm concerned about, also I think if you have like critter issues or rodents, like some that like gophers, like pots would avoid them from digging so much. There's also, well, it depends. Like if you want to adjust, I think the water, like the moisture level in pots, sometimes it could be easier because you can always just put like a saucer underneath and keep your tropical trees happier that way. Like I can't really do that in the ground because all things always drain, you know.
Well, there's ways to keep more moisture in the ground if you want to do that, but
that's true. I think most of all for me, pots work best because of a limited space, and it's really good to organize things that way. I can group them, I can move them around, I can choose them in different sizes so that they can make it work in my space better. I can put pots and shelves, and that would really expand my growing space.
I could trellis things up a wall and
I do
expand
that
my
too,
growing space.
but the trellis goes in the pot.
All right, so yeah, I mean, here's the thing. There's pros and cons to each one, and I mean, I grow mostly in the ground, but then I also use some pots to fill in spaces in my garden where I don't want to or can't necessarily grow in the ground in like my walkways. And I like growing in pots. I mean, I think Wendy came up with all the ideas that I could think of. I think the only things that she didn't mention are some of the downsides, like I talked about, is that, definitely, the soil in the pot's not connected with the ground, and you need to fertilize it more than just the earth. Especially feed in some microbes and additional fertilizer or nutrients, soil amendments in there during the season and after to make sure your plants have enough nutrients they need. But I like that they could be movable. I mean, I agree with her on all these points. Plus, they have like fabric pots that you could maybe do air pruning with and all these things. But the other thing is, pots also leak. So like always, you get washout unless you put a sauce underneath it. It might leave stains on your ground and all these kind of things. And then you got to top off. Like some of my pots are so low because the soil just comes out the bottom, unless you line the bottom with rocks or some kind of like woody mulch or something. That's what I usually do. I use all the woody big mulch pieces in the bottom of my pots so that all the soil doesn't drain out. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have anything else to add. I mean, they're both good. Just got to find what's the right for you. But I would always suggest you guys grow in the ground unless you have a specific need for a pot. Because the other thing is, plants don't like their roots constrained, right? Some plants are fine; they don't have big root zones. But like, surely, putting a fruit tree like I have right here in a pot, I mean, you could constrain the roots so much that if you leave it too long in the pot and you try to grow it on the ground, it'll just never be fully healthy because the roots have always been bound. It's like, they had foot binding in China like thousands of years ago and stuff, right? Your feet will never grow out the same. It's like if you tried to live in your closet, you don't have a space, you'd go crazy. So I think plants in pots, depending on the size of the plant and whatnot, could go crazy. I mean, small vegetables in pots or microgreens in pots, that's not going to be an issue because the roots don't get too big. But depends on the plant. So I think plant accordingly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do have things in the ground, and I notice even in Southern California, we don't get a lot of rain, but there's definitely a little bit of moisture in the ground. So even if you, like, say if your drip irrigation goes out, it is definitely more forgiving to be in the ground.
Forgiving. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and they have the room to extend and expand as much as they can.
Right.
Whereas pots, they are a little more
limited.
Yeah.
They have a smaller area to live in.
Yep. So okay. We go to the next one.
Yeah.
Next topic. My turn?
Your turn.
Okay, that gets removed.
You can't read anyway.
Yeah, they're like double folded. Okay. Oh, buying versus growing. Should I?
Choose whatever you want. I could go either way.
I would say growing because I know John wants to take that one. Growing.
Why is growing better than buying, Wendy?
Well, growing because you can control exactly, how you want it. It's like what goes in there, when to pick them. Usually the quality is a lot better. Like if you're growing fruits, you can choose whatever ripeness you wanted. Some people like it more crunchy. You can pick it at your own preference, whatever you like them. And like with greens, usually they tend to be more flavorful depending on what you put into your soil. Although, you can garden as expensively as you want or as cheaply as you want, but at least it's still like exactly where your food comes from, what's been put in it. Like there's just so much more control involved in it. And if you really want to go all out, you can add all these like minerals and compost and just so much stuff you can do with adding into the soil to improve the life, like the quality of like your plants and the taste of it. There's a lot of things that you can't buy that you can grow. And a lot of herbs that I grow, so I definitely can't even buy even if you had the money for it,
Is that all you got?
I can't just swirl everything all at once. What do you got to say?
All right, so what I'm going to say is that buying is better than growing! Wait, should I say that on the camera? That's not what I preach, but here's the thing, I buy a lot of produce, you don't understand. I mean, Wendy just saw inside my fridges, and I have 24 heads of cauliflower inside my fridge, right now. But John, you didn't grow them. I grow them in the wintertime. Well, here's the thing, right? By buying food, you could get food you can't grow.
The quantity.
And the quantity, well, especially depending on your space, like I live in a residential house, like, I could maybe grow 24 heads of cauliflower if I wanted to in the wintertime. But the other thing is, when I'm buying food, right, I could buy mass quantity for cheap. So, the way I buy food, organic food anyways, it's cheaper than growing it. My organic cauliflowers were $1 each, man. I mean, my plant starts are, I don't know how much are my plant starts? 20 cents each just for the plant start. Then I gotta put all the time, effort, water into it. And then if you're start counting my labor, it cost me more than $1 because my time is worth a lot of money, a lot more than.
Yeah.
But then I don't know how I'm able to buy organic cauliflower for $1, or I got 6 ounces of blueberries organic for $1. It takes a lot of time to pick blueberries off your vine. I was picking small figs. It took me 2 hours to pick a box of figs, and I could buy a box of figs that big locally for, I don't know, $20. And it's so I'm getting paid effectively $10 an hour, and I'm picking figs off another guy's tree, and if I had to grow the figs, I don't know. So I'd say number one is cost. So, with the convention, with the food system how it's set up, food is cheap, and we've expected cheap. Not going to say it's good quality. You might get lucky, and it might be better quality than homegrown, especially if you're doing a poor job or whatever like that, and maybe you have plant stressors, and maybe you have a crop failure, right? When you buy food, you are guaranteed you're going to eat. When you grow food, if you get a crop failure, maybe you're not going to eat tomatoes this year. I mean, I'm not having any squash this year because it's in the bed I'm looking at, and I got 2 squashes before they freaking burned up in the heat, so you won't be eating. So you have a guaranteed food to eat if you buy it, right? Number 2, you have cheaper food to eat because I could buy it cheaper than I'm able to grow it, unless my name is Tino, because then you're buying seeds and you're not putting nothing in your soil. And then the third thing is that you can't grow everything in your climate zone. Very important, right? Right now in my climate zone, I'm not growing cauliflower. If I want to grow it inside under air conditioning and do all kinds of stupid, crazy stuff that's going to make it cost even more, I could do it, but I'm not going to do that because it's stupid. I'm not going to waste my time to grow cauliflower because I want to have cauliflower. I'm just going to buy it when I see it for $1, right? Organic, which is insane. So you can't grow everything in your space depending on your climate zone and the time of year. I mean, in the wintertime in New York City, right, it's snowing or super cold. You can't grow food in the wintertime, so you got to buy it, right? Unless you want to grow microgreens inside or grow limited amounts of foods inside, but then you couldn't grow enough food inside to sustain you, right? Although if you did have a big garden outside, you could grow storage crops outside in the wintertime and then eat those, so you actually grew those, but you're storing them, but they're not fresh. So, but, buying food is always around, and, I don't have enough space to grow all my own food, so one day I will, and even then, once I have a lot of, 10 acres to grow my own food for me and my family, I'm going to grow all kinds of different crazy stuff. Yes, some of the stuff money can't buy, right? But you'll be surprised if you do some searching, like during the pandemic, I was searching online to expand my varieties of foods, and I was able to find all kinds of cool, unique foods. I mean, they're dried, not fresh, on places like Etsy, and got them shipped in. Now, they are expensive. I'm not going to say they're cheap, but you could get some really unique, exotic foods online, and ones that might be even very hard and rare to find the seeds, even to grow the certain plants if you look hard enough. So I think that's all I got. That's what I'm going to say. I mean, it could be cheaper. You can't grow everything. You probably don't have enough space to grow enough calories, so you've got to buy some food. And even if I had acreage, I would grow almost everything I need except small percentage because I'd still want to buy it because some things you can't grow, like in the tropics, they grow in a more temperate climate. Or, in the tropics, just based on the weather, climate, pattern zone, and your time of year. So I think, honestly, I love growing more than buying. Even though I'm here for buying today. But buying, there's big advantages to buying too. Low cost, larger quantities,
Yeah, and the thing that I think growing, that's why you have to kind of do it safely, where you're growing things that through your experience, what would grow well in your climate, but then also to experiment, because it's always fun to, grow new things and to learn more about your space, what you can grow. And I think gardening, when you're growing your own food, you're not only getting like health, like physical health, but you're also benefiting with like your mental health from gardening, like your spirituality, like in getting in touch with nature, being grounded, and it's just like a very therapeutic thing that you can't get from just going out and shopping for food that you don't get like a direct connection with.
I mean, I would say on the flip side, like, I get super excited when I find a deal on organic cauliflower for $1. I'm like, yes, I scored a deal. I mean, and some of you guys are shopaholics. Maybe you're women and shopping for clothes, or guys and shopping for tools or whatever you like. But, man, I really get excited when I find a good deal on something. Like, yeah, I'm eating super cheap. I can just pound it through my juicer and straight cauliflower juice, or I usually dry it and have dried cauliflower, which is totally amazing and incredible.
That's true. He gave me brought me some really good deals yesterday, or 2 days ago.
Yeah, we took you to the store and you got some good deals on some
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, like, that's the other thing too, when I go shopping, like, you know, to be a better shopper, like, I just don't go to, like, the local corner grocery store like most people in town do. You know, I'll go to, like, 6 places in one day, because every place will have different, you know, different suppliers, different vendors, different farmers that grew that food, plus they'll have different prices and different qualities of food. So, I mean, when you grow it, you only get to choose what you got, but when you're the consumer and you're buying food, you know, you could go to different stores and find the best store that has the best blueberries that taste the best, or the, you know, the cheapest price, whatever is more important to you. So that's what I like to do as a consumer. That being said, you know, I think it's more important to be a producer in our society and produce your own food instead of consume it, although, you know, I do both.
I do both too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we're going to go ahead and pick the next one out the hat. We're going to pick this one right on the top. What do we got? Annuals versus perennials. All right, you know which side I'm going to take. So we're talking about annual versus perennial vegetables or edible crops. I'm going to take annual crops.
All right.
Annual crops are way more valuable than perennial crops. Easily. Why? Because they have their roots in the ground 365 days a year, and they are benefiting more the microbiome and the rhizosphere and the soil microbes by their interaction of the root, fungi, bacterial action. Whereas annual crops, especially where they're grown, especially in standard agriculture, they got to be tilled, and there's destroying the soil microbiome. When you destroy the soil microbiome, it may contribute to things like, you know, the warming climate and the changing climate and all these things. And perennial food crops, I believe, are the way to the future, because say you plant a jackfruit tree, for example, in the tropics, not going to live in you know, temperate climates. But you could, like, when the jackfruit tree comes up, you could harvest the leaves to eat raw as a vegetable. You could harvest the immature fruit to make like a meat substitute, and you can boil the seeds and salt them and eat them as nuts. And when the fruit gets ripe, you can eat them, enjoy them like jackfruit, and or like like juicy fruit gum, which is it's a sweet fruit, right? So this fruit tree, once you plant it once, literally could feed a family, you know, a community for the life of the tree, which I don't know how long jackfruit trees live, but a long time, and at all different stages. Whereas on annual crops, you got to, you know, plant the annual crop, plant your tomatoes, it grows and then it freezes, and you got to take it down, and you got to like plant something new. It's a lot more labor too, you know. So perennial crops are a lot less labor. My tree collars, I plant them once, I trellis them up, I train them, I have leaves 365 days a year. Whereas annual crops, you know, every year I also plant annuals, which are a pain because I got to like root my water spinach. I got to grow some things like these guys, Malabar spinach, from seeds. I got to, like, you know, clone or, you know, grow more of my longevity spinach. What is that called back there?
Gynera procum.
All the time. And here's another perennial right here. This thing just grows. I mean, it grows a big tree, and then it sprouted up on its own, you know, and it just takes over. So a lot less labor, better for the soil, better for the planet, better for planetary health, and provides year-round food. Perennials are the way to go, so I want you guys to grow perennial fruit trees as well as vegetables and herbs.
Wow. Although, I agree. I mean, I have a lot of perennials in my garden. But the thing I like about annuals is that they give me this, like, it changes up the landscape, kind of going with the season, which I enjoy seeing, and, you know, putting new plants. I think it can be like a chore, but if you look at it that way, I see it as kind of fun. Like, oh, it's kind of like a new time to put new things in the ground. buy more plant starters or start some from seed or propagate your own. And it's just like a really fun time to just like rejuvenate the garden, to put in, and then there's just seems to be there's a lot of varieties of annuals, and we can take advantage of the seasons, wherever you live. Whereas like say I can't grow like carrots and beets don't grow as well in the summer for me. There's something for me to look forward to and get excited about as like the seasons change throughout the year. And sometimes the annuals can be quite fast, turn around for growing food. Like just more variety, I think, when you grow annuals.
Yeah,
Edible flowers.
I think that also depends on your climate zone. So like tomatoes could be a perennial in the right climate, whereas we don't live in the right climate, so for most of us, they're annuals. And there's many fruiting plants like that. Greens probably a bit different, But yeah, I mean, I could see. I grow a lot of annuals too, so I like the variety. I like that they're sometimes faster, and too, like right now, the summertime, my garden goes crazy, goes nuts. I could barely walk through places. So, there's a certain point where the plants get so big, so tall, and then they start getting cold, and they start getting jacked up and messed up looking. I'm actually glad that now I get to rip them all out and start fresh and start with my winter crops. So, I mean, I like annuals too, but perennials, honestly, from like the climate perspective and for the sustainability perspective, like it's a much better food source. So even if you don't grow a lot of perennials now, I'd encourage you to grow some perennials. And more importantly, if you are still buying food like we talked about in the last part of this episode, I would encourage you guys to try to buy more perennial crops to eat and to live on, because it leaves a lighter footprint on the planet than eating things like corn and wheat that are annuals that they got to keep tilling the soil to grow corn and wheat and things like soy. But fruit trees are literally planted once. And the cool thing you said about like annuals, you could look forward to different things every time of the year. Same thing with fruit trees. You plant different fruit trees. Once you plant it once, your work is done. Just keep it a little bit healthy. And then it fruits at different times of the year. So you're always going to have some food with a lot less work. So, I mean, I've always been a big fan of perennials. A challenge in a temperate climate is to find perennials that will actually grow for you year-round, that are actually interesting and taste good. Because it's a lot easier to do that in the tropics, because most plants don't like when they get too cold, the perennial ones anyways. So I think that's what I'd say. I want you guys to eat a lot of perennial crops in your daily diet. So like, eat more jackfruit or breadfruit instead of, which are fruits, instead of things like grains and beans. Not to say that grains are beans. Oh, and then if you want to eat beans, eat like things like pigeon pea that are perennial versus like annual style beans.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm growing that one.
Yeah. Better for the planet.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, speaking about labor, if you're thinking of annuals being more labor intensive, it doesn't always have to be. Like I've done a video on like a lazy garden. Basically, if stuff reseeds and when it's the right climate, the condition, it'll pop back up. So like annuals can be grown like pretty effortlessly.
Could. See, what if they could reseed, but a plant, once you got a fruit tree in the ground and it's healthy, it's just going to keep living and living, whereas the seeds, they could drop. Like I have some seeds that dropped in my garden. They don't come up for a year or two, and then they finally sprout back up. So then that's cool, but, if you're depending on food, perennial crops are much more dependable, I think.
Yeah. Or there's also weeds that come up as annuals.
Yeah,
they definitely.
Yeah, I have a lot of weeds
some
that come
are
up
really
as
guaranteed.
annuals. Yeah.
Yeah.
You always have lamb's quarters. And purslane.
And purslane, yeah. Right. You ready for the next topic?
Yeah, it's your pick.
It's my pick. Okay. Fruits versus veggies. I guess I'll talk about fruits. Fruits. Well, like I've talked about earlier about how when you're growing your own food, you can choose when to pick them. And I think fruits is especially important because it's really hard to find really delicious, fully ripe fruits, unless I guess sometimes certain farmers markets, some growers have like that good practice of like picking things that are like super ripe, but then like the shelf life is not so good. So I can see like it's hard to buy really good fruits. And some fruits they don't sell at the grocery store, like some heirlooms and some special varieties that I'm growing right now, You can't buy them at the store, and they're just, like, when you talk about like eating like a lot of plant-based food, fruit is like the candy, and it's like this thing that really glows and makes you super excited. Like it's just a different experience of harvesting your own fruits versus some like leaves, you know. The experience is different, like the taste of it and the like and the different colors. Like fruits offer so many different more colors than like vegetables. Would you say? Go see what I got to tell you.
Yeah, see what I got.
Fruits is a really great way to like bring kids to the garden, you know, because like it's easier to tell kids to try a new fruit than a new leaf. What about greens?
I got a new leaf you could try. No, all right.
So excited.
So good. Wendy, trust me, I can make anything sound exciting. It's a tonality. That's what it is. All right, Wendy. So I think, you know, vegetables are way more important to grow, especially than fruits, but also just to eat than fruits. Actually, I eat a vegetable-based diet. A lot of people on my diet would eat a fruit-based diet, but I eat a vegetable-based diet. So, I mean, I could totally get into some of the science, but here's the thing. I mean, vegetables have a lot more nutrients per calorie than the fruits. Fruits have a lot more calories than nutrients in general because they have the sugar content in general. That's why people like them so much. But while we do need sugar and the calories from the sugar, which is a natural sugar, which which is a healthy sugar in my opinion, whereas processed sugars are not a healthy sugar, like, you know, agave syrup and even, you know, white sugar and granulated sugar and brown sugar and all these things. But the greens are much more important for us because they have they're more mineral rich and they're more phytonutrient rich, and especially some of the phytonutrients may be better absorbed with some of the protein in the leaves, because also leaves are more protein rich, and we all know that we need protein to survive. There is also protein in fruit, not going to discount that, but the vegetables have a lot more protein than the fruits. If we look at some of the strongest animals on earth, right, they eat a lot of leaves. So some of the strongest animals on earth are powered by greens. I mean, think about giraffes that are reaching up in the trees and just chomping on leaves all day. Now, yes, they are lower in calories, but these greens have a lot of nutrients and phytochemicals that you got to eat in larger quantities so that you can be healthier, you know. And that's why I live my life on a vegetable-based diet, and that's why I like to juice my vegetables, because now I can concentrate more vegetables, and in, you know, a 32-ounce green juice, that's like 4 pounds of vegetables that I'm now getting. It's lower calorie. This is especially important for most Americans that want to lose weight, because vegetables have a lot less calories, like 1/3 on average, less calories than the fruits do. Now, the other thing about fruits, as much as I love fruits and eat fruits every single day myself, the vegetables also help with phase 2 detoxification. There are nutrients in the vegetables, especially like the moringa I have growing over here, and cruciferous vegetables that help with stage 2 liver detoxification. So if you only ever ate fruits, you may not get into the stage 2 liver detoxification, which might not be a good thing. You know, so that, I mean, and the other thing is greens are so much easier to grow than fruits, right? If you want to grow a fruit, you got to grow the greens first. Then the greens have to be healthy, and then the flowers have to come, then they have to get pollinated, and then once it gets pollinated, then it has to grow, and then hopefully a rat or a bird doesn't eat it. And with the greens, I mean, yeah, bugs might eat the greens too, but you're going to be much more successful at growing greens in your garden than fruits. I mean, I am more successful growing greens than fruits in my garden. You know, even if I get my zucchini plants or my cucumber plants to grow greens, it doesn't grow the fruit, it still grows the greens, right? I don't necessarily eat my greens and my cucumbers or zucchini fruits, or although you could, I suppose. But other greens are so nutritious, especially greens and vegetables. I would also consider things like herbs that are so high in essential oils that will actually fight off bugs, whereas, you know, fruits are meant to attract insects and bugs and creatures so that they eat the fruit, also eat the seeds, and then they scurry around and travel around and then poop out the seeds with the fruit, and then now the new fruit tree could come up, whereas a lot of animals also will eat greens. But you're more likely to find greens, ripe greens and fruits, and especially when you grow your own greens, you could pick them, the small, young, and tender inside ones that taste way better than the store. You know, yeah, I mean, I'm also going to say, but here's the other thing too, if you're buying your vegetables at the store, generally overall, you know, like leafy greens, taste better than fruits, because vegetables, at least when they're picked, you know, the ripeness is not as important as with fruits, because if fruits aren't ripe, they're not going to be sweet. but vegetables always pretty much kind of can taste the same. If they're younger, then of course they're going to taste sweeter, and that's why I'd always recommend for you guys to buy microgreens, grow your own sprouts, or get baby greens whenever possible.
Yeah, and but then with fruits, some of them, you can eat the skin. So try to eat the skin. I think that would be beneficial. Like it's kind of like, how should I put it? It's, I don't know, actual like benefits, like the health benefits behind it compared to like leafy greens. But then like don't forget about like the skin part of the fruits if they're edible,
If it's
because
edible,
that's so that's because that's very nutritious. So you're not only
Still
just
not
getting
as
the sugar.
nutritious as the leaves.
Depends. There's some skin that have like lots of colors on them, right?
Yeah, I mean, apple skins are anti-cancer, but so are carrot skins, and the carrot itself have anti-cancer properties. So, like, I eat fruits and vegetables. I don't just like only eat one or the other. But if I had to choose, well, here's the other thing, right? People on a healing diet from cancer, like the Gerson therapy, or like these at Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida, for healing, they tell people not to eat fruits because, Dr. Brian Clement says, the sugar in the fruits could help cause cancer to grow. Now, then I also have people that will say, eat a fruit diet to cure your cancer, which, if it was me, I would choose a vegetable-based diet, and I do not want to get as much sugar because I want a lot more of these phytochemicals, and that's the main reason I think it comes down to phytochemicals. And as much as Wendy said, fruits come in different colors, vegetables can come in all different kinds of colors too. I mean, if you think of autumn leaves in New York or up in the East Coast where like the leaves drop and they're like, first they're green, then they turn kind of reddish, then they turn orange and yellow and all these amazing cool colors. These are all the pigments in the leaves that are never shown because the chlorophyll of the green is a dominant color until the weather changes. But even if you eat green leaves, you're still getting a lot of the different pigments and colors and beta carotenes, which is, maybe expressed as orange or yellows. And the greens of beets could have things like the betalains in there, and like I grow anthocyanin-rich purple leaves in the wintertime. I mean, even now I think I have a few, like I have purple basil growing, which are anthocyanin-rich, much like the anthocyanin in blueberries. And the other thing I didn't tell you is that there's a study, that says like the purple in blueberries are not as well absorbed as like leafy greens or vegetable anthocyanins because you need to eat it with some protein. So if you do eat fruits that are anthocyanin rich, make sure you eat it with some nuts or some other protein or some greens so that you'll have maybe better uptake of those anthocyanins. So I mean, for me, vegetables all the way. That being said, I still eat fruits.
All
right, last one. Plant starts versus seeds. All right, you know what I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick plant starts because basically, well, almost all my garden is done by plant starts. I mean, I have a few seeds, like these are done by seeds. Yeah, so I would say plant starts are a much easier way to grow a garden to assure that you will be successful. The thing with seeds is if you have seeds, they can be way less expensive than plant starts. I will totally give the seeds that. But the other thing, if you try to germinate your seeds and then they come up tall and leggy, or they just never germinate, and then you start off with plants that are not healthy because you don't know how to do it because you've never done it before, then your garden is going to suck because the most important time to get your plants healthy is when they're babies. If they're not healthy when they're babies, they're definitely not going to be healthy as adults. So that's why I like to go around to, most of the time, select nurseries that I know that grow the highest quality, best plant starts that are healthy so that I could plant them so that I don't have to baby all these plant starts and pay attention to them because I got more important things to pay attention to than seedlings that are coming up because that's the hardest time to take care of plants. Once I put my plant starts into my ground, they're more resilient because they're not babies. I mean, if you have little seeds that are sprouting and the two new cotyledon leaves that come up, right, those leaves are very tender, man. Birds and bugs love to eat those leaves, right? But if I buy a plant start that already has past its cotyledon, first set, second set, even third set of leaves, right, it's going to be a lot more hardy, a lot more strong, and more guaranteed to survive, And the other thing is, I guess you could direct seed things in a garden, but also when I do plant starts, I could just literally have a whole bunch of plant starts and just pop them in my garden and flip my garden like literally the next day so that I barely have any downtime instead of planting things from seeds and then having times where there's basically no roots in the ground because the roots haven't developed yet. So yeah, convenience I think is also very important to me because like I'm a last minute guy. Like I can't advance plan. And if you want to have seedlings at the right time to plant them, you got to start like 2-3 months in advance, right? Depending on the plant, maybe a month if you're lucky on some of them. And I just can't be planning out things that far in advance because I'm like an immediate guy. Like, oh, I got empty space. Let's go to the nursery, buy some plant starts and put them in and then be done with it, right? So to me, plant starts all the way. They're just much easier. You're going to have a higher level of success rate, especially if you're really busy like I am. You don't have to deal with taking care of plants and losing them. And plus, you're going to get healthy plant starts from the get-go, which means you're going to have a healthier garden in the long run.
Well, I think that's exactly the reason why you should be trying to grow some stuff from seed, because it teaches you how to, you know, like organize your time and be a better planner. And I think I usually do a lot more plant starters personally, but you know, I think everyone should experience, like, to really get to know the plant and to learn the process, like growing from seed, and it actually helps you, like, really to appreciate, like, the effort and the time it takes for the plants to grow. Whereas, you know, when you're just buying something and plugging them in, you know, it's kind of like you're taking a lot of the things for granted, it seems. And it's definitely, like you said, it's like a lot more cost effective. And there's so many different types of seeds out there that you can buy that they don't sell in nurseries, like plant starters of like a lot of different kinds. So you can grow a lot more variety of things when it comes to like starting things from seed. You can have like a lot more selections, pick like the best ones out of them without paying that big of a price, especially with things you want to get really unique things that you can't buy, like live plants. A lot of international shipping, you can get more, like you have more access to like seeds. I think it's like the experience of it's so fun. It's like raising a pet almost. Like you get to see it, like, oh, you know, I wake up the next day and I'm like, I wonder if there's this new leaf that's coming. Dainty like the seed, like this little dot, and then it grows into this like really big plant. There's some sort of like satisfaction that comes with growing from seed.
So the other thing, the benefit of seeds that I see, not from plant starts, is that you can save them. You can't really save a plant start for next year. You could do cuttings and then keep them as alive. But, you know, I have a full-on seed collection inside my house in case I can't buy plant starts. I could start things from seed and have a food source in case nurseries shut down and I'm screwed. I have all kinds of crazy seed packets that now I could basically bring out and start so I could grow food from literally just seeds. Also works good if you're traveling, right? If you're moving across the country and you want to bring your plants with you, it's a lot more difficult to, you know, bring your live plants with you, although I've done that on airplanes and whatnot before. It's a lot easier to bring seeds with you so that you could keep the genetic diversity alive. You know, I grow plenty of things from seed, but it's not me physically starting the seeds. I maybe planted from seed like in pots, right? Maybe less than 4 dozen plants, like maybe every year usually. But how I do seeds is I'll take seeds and I'll broadcast them. So in my raised bed over there, I planted like jewels of au pair. And there's a few coming up, but I just put ones next to each dripper. So I'll direct seed, and then sometimes I'll just have so many seeds, I'll take the seeds and just throw them out in my garden. A lot of times I'm really lazy to collect my seeds, so all my dill seeds that came up, they just blew off naturally. And next year when the season's right, which is a couple months, I'm just going to have dill starts coming up everywhere. And, you know, some of these plants that I'm growing, like the water pepper, just come back every year. The lamb's quarters come back every year, and these are all from seeds, but I didn't start them. So, I mean, I do like seeds for that, to get some more randomness in my garden.
And don't the seeds come back like each year, like stronger each year, because they're actually acclimating to your climate?
And that's the other thing too. You could select for seeds. So, for example, like on my lamb's quarter seeds, right? If the plant starts to go into seed earlier in the season, and I see it, like there's a few now, I'll cut it down because I do not want to have plants that flower too early, because that's going to cut the leaf production. I want to have plants that will flower late in the season, and I'll let those grow and then go to seed like in a month or two, and then I'll let those grow and go to maturity and then produce seeds, and then let them drop all over, and not the ones that produce earlier. And when you get plant starts, you don't have that kind of control, because you just kind of get whatever they're growing. You know, luckily I'm able to find some really good nurseries that usually have some pretty unique stuff, which is kind of fun. And I try to usually buy ones that I know are going to do good, and then a few that are kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen, to see what's going to happen. And then the other thing is, you could always save your seeds from the plant starts you buy anyways, which I would encourage you guys to do.
I agree.
Every year base will always do well in my garden. Like
Certain things,
in the summertime, it always is going to do well. Like so yeah. I mean, some of my sweet potatoes, I grew sweet potato slips from sweet potatoes. So I guess that's not necessarily starting seeds, but that's like starting your own plants, and that was pretty easy. And then of course I also bought I bought sweet potato slips on eBay. So now I have two varieties of one, of a purple potato that I was able to source locally, and then one of a different variety that I couldn't get unless I bought them. But then I bought slips, which are plants and not seeds. They're a lot easier to keep alive.
Yeah, they are.
And give you a jump and a head start, too. Yeah.
I do like starters a lot that way. I think
that's all the questions.
That's all the questions. Covered quite a broad range of topics. Yeah, well, I definitely learned a lot.
Oh, good.
And it's hard to like suddenly just like pull everything like put all the information in one place,
Well, that's what I'm good at.
But you're definitely good at that.
So I do every day. It's fun to use your knowledge, use the knowledge that you have acquired, and then share it so that you could also, get it out to the world, but also more ingrained, more deeply in you, and also be able to think more creatively on, things that you wouldn't necessarily want to argue. Like I wouldn't necessarily want to argue like why buying food is better than growing it, but there are advantages to each, and I want you guys to always try to think of the pros and the cons. And depending on the situation, one or the other might make more sense. I mean, I'm always going to be a fan of growing my own stuff first, but the fact of the matter is I can't grow everything, and sometimes it is cheaper and easier to buy it, especially in larger quantities. I mean, my cauliflower usually never gets super big, but they're always super delicious, whereas I could buy a lot nicer, bigger organic cauliflower for a lot cheaper. The one thing I would like to say, though, at the end, Wendy, is for your viewers is, who do you think did a better job overall? Me or Wendy? Well, and keep in mind, you're leaving a comment on Wendy's channel.
Well, in this video, I mean, the point of this is to expand your mind and your outlook and perspective on things. And it did for me too, with learning so much more. We're not here to
argue our point or be the winner. I mean, we would agree with probably most things with few variances.
Yeah.
But every side is important.
Definitely. There's always pros and cons to everything on both sides.
There's always shades of gray, and I want you guys to kind of think more outside the box. And even if people don't have the exact same views as you, I want you guys to understand and look for the good in people and look for why that reason might be good, even if you may not agree with it or want to do it.
Well, I definitely would vote for John, who did a better job, obviously.
Oh, thank you.
But if you want to say something else, you can go to his channel.
I mean, I think I did a better job. And,
I've been
doing this a lot longer, and I read a lot
You're
more.
wiser.
I do a lot more research than you do. Like almost every day, I'm looking up scholar.google.com and all kinds of crazy, stupid stuff.
Well, it's definitely hard for me to just suddenly be able to gather every single thing that and just set it there.
Yeah. Plus, I'm quick on my feet too.
Yeah.
And I
Because he eats a lot of greens.
I have a lot of greens. Phytonutrients, man.
All right, guys. Any last words?
I've said it all. Yeah, check out my channel, Growing Your Greens. If you haven't, I always have cool videos coming up.
Yeah, follow his Instagram too. He's got a lot
at Growing Your Greens. Yeah, I always have a lot of. I try to share a lot of information that I look up actually on scholar.google.com, because when I'm posting Instagram, I kind of what can I learn about this plant that I didn't know before, and also that I could share with others that they probably don't know either.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell button if you have not. And let me know in the comments down below who did a better job. Just kidding. Okay. All right, guys. I'll leave information that if John has done any references, all that, I'll leave that information as well as my website and the ways to contact me in the description box below. Thank you, and thank you, John.
You're welcome.
See you guys back here soon. Bye.
All right, that was